Welcome. My name is Donna Berry. I write the Daily Dose of Dairy newsletter, and you are joining me today with Whitney Beam, Marketing Director at Parker Food Group, as well as April Thiel, the Vice President of Sales at Parker Food Group. And they are the sponsors of this presentation where we are going to show you all of the exciting opportunities that exist in what I like to call the fresh dairy category. This is desserts, spreads, and yogurt. So let's jump right in, and I'm going to explain to you why I think the time is now for the U.S. market to get active in this space. See, the brand Haagen-Dazs, which we are very familiar with in the freezer, is now going to be available in the refrigerated dairy department. They have come out with what they call a premium yogurt, which is just loaded with deliciousness, including a bunch of texture through inclusions and add-ins. And this brand is going to raise awareness to consumers across the country about this rather undeveloped category in the U.S., and it's an opportunity for growth. Could it possibly be the next Greek yogurt? Maybe. When I said that it's not popular in the US, but it is very popular overseas and across the border. In Mexico, in UK, in France, even in Asia, you'll find a lot of different single serve type desserts that have a layer of dairy and layers of other extra deliciousness. Here are some products in the US that have come out over the past year. We have cheesecakes in these clear glass jars so that you can see the different layers. There's this cookies and cream dessert dip, which starts with Neuchâtel and then has, of course, what we think of as cookies and creams, and just different desserts that are just loaded with layers of flavor. Here are some other formats. You saw the clear containers, the glass and plastic, but there are finger foods, truffles and cheesecake bites and parfait bars. And then there can even be these cups that have a dome on top so that the consumer can add the extras into the dairy base. You can also use a dual compartment container where it's on the side and you flip it over and you add it in. And I mentioned how these products are very popular overseas and across the border. And this is an opportunity for innovators to bring those flavors to the US through what is a familiar format for many people and hasn't been available here. And here are some examples. So we're going to jump into talking with Whitney and April because they are just a wealth of information in this space. And I posed the question to both of you. So you see a lot of what's going on and you know what some of your customers are working on. So what are some of the interesting dessert, indulgent, and fruit flavors growing in both regional and retail popularity?
Yeah, thanks, Donna, for having us on today. So, to answer that question, there's a lot of excitement and activity in this space. And, how do we start working with customers? So we start to look at kind of that customer consumer base. And then Parker Food Group, we're an ingredient manufacturer. So we look at flavor, texture, and functionality in the application that they need. So for example, this is yogurt. And then we figure out where they're selling, which retailer they're trying to sell to, which food service distribution channel, and then start to really put together concepts with them or kind of figure out what their consumers are wanting. And so charts like this that is provided by Data Essentials really helps us narrow into some of these great ideas and flavor combinations. So, what is a customer or a consumer like in the West Coast is maybe a little bit different than the South. And so we take some of these real call outs like a Macintosh apple with a sweet chocolate piece and come up with ways to kind of bring those creations to life. A lot like the examples that you showed. And then also we take a lot of macro trends. So you talked about global inspiration. Americans are being much more likely to try new flavors that are from across the globe, are nostalgic. That's another trend that we're really trying to figure out different ways to bring to life in different formats.
Sounds so yummy. April, you have anything to add?
No, just to to piggyback onto that, we're out there in the field, we see what our customers are developing and what they're looking for, and we're also translating, how Whitney mentioned from the menus that we see, and how what's driving those purchases, and what's driving the consumer to go out and buy the product. So we kind of marry those, deconstruct desserts, and then bring those to life in different dessert formats for our customers.
And I think just to kind of dig into that a little bit deeper, what's most interesting is just people are consuming these types of items all different times of the day. So you can really look at different menu items or different spaces for inspiration. So if it's breakfast or a nighttime treat or an afternoon piece, and you're trying to get some nutritional benefit, it really depends on what you're going after, but there's so many different flavor delivery systems that you can really provide texture. And I think that's one thing, when we look at the data, consumers, especially Gen Z, are wanting more texture. They'll use the word like something fluffy, something crunchy in the food that they're buying, and especially for the premium items that they're kind of indulging at home.
Well, wonderful. Yeah, I love that term, deconstruct desserts. So lots of opportunity. Okay, so let me go into the second question I have for you. How do we translate these into new innovative concepts for yogurt or for these cheesecake type products, a flan? Tell me a little bit more about that.
Well, that's a loaded question because there's so much room to play, but I think where you start is really just figuring out the space you want to play in. And so if it is that deconstructed dessert, so for example, on the slides here, here's all the dessert flavors that it's kind of the trend. So think far left is inception, early stage, think of it as an infant, where on the far right is the ubiquity. So that's a little bit more mainstream. You'll see it very commercially available. I think a lot of the trends that we're seeing in the projects that April and I are working on take something new and put it with something familiar. And between that, then you're exciting your consumers, but you're also not scaring them, and you're welcoming them into a new space to try something different.
I love that. April, you want to add anything?
Sure. Yeah. So, speaking to some of the items that we are working on, and how we are able to work with our customers to elevate their desserts and their yogurts, dairy products, we take that aspect, like Whitney mentioned, to provide, a different textural profile, or, to bring something, familiar, along with something exciting and new. So between all of our capabilities, those hard and soft candies, cookies, anything to add that textural flavor profile, that familiarity, we can do that through, all of our product capabilities and excite their consumer.
I think one of the things that you said, which really struck me, is you were talking, it's the familiar with something a little bit different, something a little bit edgy, giving, an adventure. And I think that's the beauty of these, premium fresh dairy bases. Again, like, a pudding, a flan, but even something like a goat cheese. We see goat cheese always with tons of, things on top of it. It's a familiar product that's the carrier, and then these extra add-ins. And I have to tell you, I'm looking at blood orange over here, and that happens to be one of my favorite flavors, and it is so difficult to find in anything. So I highly encourage the listeners to explore that. So go ahead and tell us a little bit more about all of your goodies as we wrap up today.
Sure. And, as we mentioned, I think a little bit earlier, Parker Food Group, we are a manufacturer of custom solutions for the industry. We do a lot of manufacturing of ingredients for the dairy space, as well as other product categories like bakery and confectionery. But speaking to dairy, you can see across all of our capabilities here how we can add texture, and flavor and visual to different products by a variety of inclusions and a variety of toppers, including our praline and glazed products, baked inclusions, different streusels and crumbs, various cookies from whole format down to the tiny little gems, different seeds, as well as crushed cookies. We also have the ability to manufacture fruit preps and variegates, where you might have a swirl through an ice cream, or a swirl or fruit on the bottom of a yogurt, where you're adding a different textural flavor profile to that product, as well as different other hard candies and soft candies like our barks, cold extruded items, sprinkles, droplets, and candies. So, taking different elements from hard to soft candies to give that different textural experience, different flavor profiles, different value modifiers. We're seeing a lot of customers go in the direction of clean label, sustainable type products. So, we can add all those value modifiers, source, ingredients that do meet their needs, and then provide an excitement in terms of that flavor profile and texture to the end customer, where it does really differentiate the end product.
And I think, I think we're out of time here, Donna, but you can see just from this slide, there's so much excitement that you can add in different shapes, flavors, textures, and like April said, functional needs. So we're happy to make more relationships and connections. We always have ideas like you see on the screen here, and we do work across and get actually quite a bit of inspiration in all the application areas we work on. And so a lot of times great ideas come from one category, as we've talked about before in previous conversations, and we kind of bring them over to a new category.
Well, thank you very much, April and Whitney. This has been extremely insightful. I appreciate you being the sponsor of today's session. And why don't you go ahead and provide your contact information, or just encourage everybody to reach out. And again, blood orange, blood orange.
All right. Well, we appreciate your time today.
Thank you very much, everybody.